But now I don't see those cobbles and curbs. I don't hear the blues anymore.
Rough Trade is giving away a third of the first 3 months of the Rough Trade Club plus new music membership exclusively to 101 Part-Time Jobs listeners. Become a member of Rough Trade Club New Music and you'll receive the Rough Trade Album of the Month straight to your door every month on exclusive vinyl pressing with exclusive bonus material. Club members have received exclusive pressings of albums from Sufjan Stevens, Sprint, The Last Dinner Party, Julie Byrne, and Over Mono, just to name a few, this past year alone. Sign up using the promo code CLUB101POD and you'll get the Rough Trade Album of the Month, English Teacher's excellent debut album, This Could Be Texas, on exclusive Galaxy Gold for a third of the usual price. Here's English Teacher on a recent episode of 101.
How many opportunities do you get to write a debut album and have all of this, sport behind us? I don't know, I really like the idea of holding the bar as being like classic songs.
You only get one shot at a debut.
Don't want the album of the month but still want all the benefits? Sign up to the standard tier using Club 101 Pod and you'll still get the first month free. You'll also get free shipping on all orders, 10% off the bar and on secondhand vinyl in-store, and exclusive access to sold-out Rough Trade events. So don't hang around. Go to roughtrade.com/club and sign up with the code CLUB101POD. That's CLUB101POD and claim money off the album of the month, English Teachers This Could Be Texas, today. This offer's available to UK residents only. Do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
The Vietnam War, it's over. Your job has just begun.
A new HBO original limited series.
Welcome to the world of spycraft. Strap in.
From executive producers Park Chan-wook and Robert Downey Jr.
What are you concealing?
Based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Viet Thanh Nguyen.
What if I told you that I was a communist spy?
How did you become this?
The Sympathizer, streaming April 14th on Max. Subscription required.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
All right, you're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs, a podcast that broadens our understanding of how musicians and artists survive. I'm Giles Bidder, and I speak to some amazing songwriters about how they get through their days prioritizing music. Today is a special episode. It's the 300th episode of 101 Part-Time Jobs. Kind of nuts to think about that. I've only made a touch on my 10,000 hours of trying to be some kind of expert, heavily in quote marks. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined me on this ride, who's listened. Even if you've listened to 1 or 2 episodes, that's the way this thing happens. You tune in for the bands you love the most. I get it, and that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, if and when you have done. I'm really excited. Today's episode is with someone who's had a huge impact on my life. My older brother, who I idolized growing up, we kind of fell out of touch as we got older, like family do. I'm sure that you've had a similar thing where you lose that kind of day-to-day contact with family. And with my older brother, it was Kurt Weill that really gave both of us a reference point. We both fell in love with Waking on a Pretty Days in 2013, and since then we've become better and better friends, and I feel like Kurt Weill is the person to thank for that. Music will always play such a huge impact on our lives, deeply personal stuff, and Kurt Weill and his music has had such a profound influence on my personal life, my family life. So to speak to him on the 300th episode is awesome. It's really something else. Kurt Weill's new EP, Back to Moon Beach, just came out last week. I feel like it's a bit of a Trojan horse at 9 tracks. It's a secret album, basically. I've been jamming that. It's a brilliant record. Thank you so much for joining on this 300th episode of 101 Part-Time Jobs. We got 2 live shows coming up, both in London. We've got Bob Villan and also Bex in conversation on the 12th of December at Bush Hall. And then in late January, I'm speaking to Joe Talbot from Idols at Signature Brew in Black Horse Road, which is sold out. Maybe some tickets will come up for that. But thank you so much to everyone who bought a ticket to the Idols Joe Talbot live in conversation. I just got a WhatsApp number where people can text in some of the more interesting jobs they've done. I want to shout out Bobby, who lives in Brighton, and what he does is he works for a US production company that makes TV shows about sharks. Shark Week, right? That beats the Super Bowl week. That beats America's Got Talent, all the rest of it. Shark Week in the States is the most watched week of television in the United States, and it's his job to find puns and to title the episodes, finding interesting little facts about these sharks and make them into punny headlines. So shout out Bobby. If you want to get in touch, go to the website 101 Part-Time Jobs. You'll find a link at the top and you can WhatsApp me your most interesting story, facts, anecdotes from jobs that you've worked. Keep them coming, send them along, and I'll be reading them out on future episodes. I love that. It's about people. It's about people, this. You can subscribe and leave a review. All that stuff helps the numbers. Shout out to 2000 Trees Festival, which is a brilliant rock festival in Cheltenham, just a few hours away from London on the train. They've just announced their mega lineup for 2024. The Gaslight Anthem are headlining, Hot Mulligan are playing, Manchester Orchestra, Gouge Away, the Mysterines, loads of bands still to be announced across all kinds of shades of alternative music, some punk and hardcore, some more chill out acoustic stuff in there as well. 2000 Trees, brilliant UK festival. I highly recommend going. Tickets right now are the cheapest they'll ever be, and if you get a ticket before the end of the year, then you can get a free refund on that. So if you make plans for something else, you can get all your money back. 2000trees.co.uk is where you can get your ticket from. Don't miss out. Okay, before we get into this chat, I've got Rebecca from Ampolo here. Ampolo is the first all-in-one app connecting a global community of musicians and bringing an all-in-one place to practice, record, and collaborate. Until now, practicing has been kind of lonely. There's been technical barriers. These are all things that Ampolo is working to make your life better for. Isn't that right, Rebecca? What's going on over there?
Hey, it's quite expensive getting yourself to a recording studio, to a practice room, taking your instruments there, hiring the room out, food, travel, everything that comes with that. You can now record and practice with each other from the comfort of your own home, and the audio quality is amazing. And you can look back at what you've done and what you look like. So it's a real great tool to sit alongside any musician from any level. Ampolo,
get on it sooner than later. Right, it's the 300th episode, 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Bidder, and here's Philadelphia's hoagie hero, Kurt Weill. 101 Part-Time Jobs.
That's how music, for me at least, happens. Same with writing something down. You got to get it fast and you got to get it then, and then maybe eventually, like I say, everything will be up and running, and then you'll be in a place where you can trust that you'll get it on the hi-fi recording system. But I have yet, I'm always thinking ahead to that time, so I thank Thank goodness the phones sound so good. At least like the speakers, the new iPhone, the speaker sounds so good. So I'm always like, well, I got it. I don't care anymore. You know, you could put a mic up to this phone and then we'll just add to this, you know?
Do you ever get that feeling though when you're listening to something for the first time? Like nowadays we'll be like maybe in bed at midnight or waking up and we'll look at our phones and we're like, oh, that record just came out on Spotify. I'm trying to get out of the habit of pressing play to hear it on my phone speaker, you know, and like get off my ass and go stand up, go put it on the good speakers.
That's true, but for me, for research for my own records, it's an important lesson. A lot of people are doing that, so you want to make sure it sounds banging straight out of that phone. Most people are doing that, at least at first.
Were you self-recording in the earlier years of KV, of doing your own stuff?
I mean, I was especially when I was a teenager, I would use a cassette recorder, not even a 4-track, just a tape recorder in my bedroom. But luckily I had friends who were a little older than me that went to the same high school as me that were in a band, and he had older brothers, both of whom recorded me. Like first on a 4-track, but it sounded so pro. I heard it back, and I was like, I thought I was Nirvana or something. I couldn't believe it, you know. So in the whole, in the late '90s and early 2000s, that was like some kind of cusp of you could record in somebody's basement on their computer, and you're like, oh wow, you know. So I kind of always had that record in a house thing going, and then I always wanted to get to the big studios. But yeah, somewhere along when I moved up to Boston a couple years, and I recorded with people enough, and I recorded this one dude who had a digital 8-track. So I took that when I was more in seclusion and learned that. But then when I came, my dream was always to get into the studios, and when I finally did through Matador and stuff, get into the real recording studios, I was always trying to get back to the DIY recording thing, but kind of mix it with the hi-fi, like build an ultimate studio. But I'm only there now. Only in the last couple of years did I achieve that.
Were you a pretty habitual songwriter from the start?
Yeah, I mean, since I got an instrument, really, you know, I've been writing my own songs. So sometimes they're fragments, other times they're fully formed. I've been doing it long enough now that I write slower than ever because because my songs, I feel like they're more simple all the time, and I'm like, oh, I'll fill up a journal really fast of words or something, and I'll just play a guitar riff or something for hours. But will I like flatten down some lyrics straight across a song for a certain amount of time and say that's a song? I do that less and less because I like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I just sort of have done it so long that ultimately I just need to get in the studio, and eventually that's when I complete it. You know, I kind of keep things open. More, not all the time, but often these days. That's how I like to do it.
I think going on a plane today, that was a big, for me, I was like, oh damn, this is something else. You know, this is a twist deeper, you know, with the screwdriver. You know, it's like going deeper and deeper. That song for me was a real standout. You know, going simpler, keeping the storytelling is better than ever, yet it's a more simple song.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, and that's like having a piano around the house, sort of. That's a good example of, you know, I was talking about a guitar riff or something, but that's a couple of chords, but it's like a very hypnotic and groovy riff, but it's just a couple. So I would just be walking past the piano throughout the day for months or years, you know, and play that riff, and those couple lyrics came quick, and that's an example of, I probably assumed I'd have a bunch more lyrics, but just a couple of verses, really. And then somewhere along the way, I could hear the trumpet. You know, I sort of composed those horn lines, imagine what they'd be like. And then a year or so later, we actually get a real saxophone player in there from James Stewart from the Sun Ra Orchestra. You know, he recorded that in my basement, and I played the trumpet, you know, But yeah, and then my bandmate Adam Langelotti, he's the newest member. He joined when we toured this record, but he built my whole studio. And while he was building my studio, he'd hear me demonically playing that riff all the time. He's like, "This is better make the record because that like is the soundtrack, like the repetitive soundtrack to my life, building your studio." You know,
this stuff. Thinking about music, writing every day, having that thing where you can have a day dispersed with picking up a guitar, playing the piano, before you kind of had the time where you were able to do that. I mean, I guess I'm talking about growing up and finishing school and working different part-time jobs and bits like that. How do you look back on that time? I mean, I feel like I've always been interested in reading like long features about bands, and there's always that kind of chrysalis period of a band or an artist really kind of owning their stuff, but it still takes a couple of years for them to kind of be able to play music and think about music every day. I mean, how do you look back on that kind of period of your life?
My chrysalis, that's like my favorite. It's like Casey Musgraves, like. It's just one word in this really catchy song. You give me butterflies, but she's like one song, one hook. She's like my chrysalis. I don't know, but my daughter, we are obsessed with that album when it came out here. But anyway,
I need to hear more Casey.
It's her hit record, Golden Hour. That's a big one in my family. But anyway, yeah, it's interesting you say thinking about music all the time, blah blah blah. Because when you're younger, it's like a dream, and I'm obsessed. And I was just doing it constantly anyway, with the dream to like, quote unquote, make it somehow. And now, I'm still always thinking about music, but I'm in my 40s. I have less to prove. I feel like prove myself, mind you. Like, I always want to prove myself to the world, and there's like competitive, and I'm still competitive, but still something about the 40s. It's a godsend for me because it's just a little less of a heart attack, because I know I'm going to be doing this with the rest of my life, like and I kind of like you kind of figured out what like people like Neil Young or something, they're doing it the rest of their life, but there's a moment in your 20s or 30s where you're like, maybe you're like, I don't know, maybe the reviews change or something, and you're like, am I washed up or?
And you could be like kind of big in your kind of in your game. You could be signed to Matador and be playing good slots at Euro festivals, but I suppose there's still that chance that it might not pull through the way you want it to.
Yeah, and I definitely like when I signed to Verve Records, I definitely it was really just the opportunity arrived. I was out of a contract, and then they. Verve Records, I was staring at that a million, Velvet Underground, you stare at that, or then you see it on Jazz Records, and you're like, oh, wow, this other label actually wants to sign me. That's flattering, like, and then, but yeah, you're also like, well, I don't know. I mean, what am I going to do next? What does it look like? What is the next move? Because I do have a family, and I don't know, so yeah, but I feel like that combined with being in my 40s and a very convenient pandemic, so I could catch my breath. No, I'm just kidding. But in a way, in a way, it's true. I think all those things combined. I'm thinking about music all the time now too, but reading books and listening to jazz records at the same time, and filling up a journal and picking up my guitar when I want to, or that it's time to get on the stage. And combine the stage and the studio, like they both inform each other. But like sometimes you need an excuse to get out of the house, and that to keep things moving. You're like, oh, got a gig. That's why I like that. There's always a gig on the horizon. It might be a few months from now, but that keeps me going. If I had 0 gigs on the horizon, I might, I was looking for some kind of joke with a chrysalis, but it's kind of the opposite, isn't it?
And you're from a big family, and I'm from a family I've got like 2 siblings, and that was loud enough. You're one of 10. Do you think that's had like You know, do you think that you're impressionable to to those kinds of people around you, and that kind of? I guess my question is like that idea of always wanting to do stuff. Do you think that comes from being in a family? It must have always been in motion growing up.
Well, I especially now, I like to like hang out with my brothers and sisters, and it's like we're like a gang, and it's fun. We got our own sense of humor, or go out to shows. Pretty nostalgic. Like we saw Beck, for instance. And me and all my brothers, and I realized I hadn't seen him in years, but he was the soundtrack to our lives as kids. So that, you know, and it was awesome just to be kind of partying out there in the summer in the field, seeing Beck. But
what do they think you do? What do they think about you?
We're all different types of artists and musicians, and so they're super supportive, and I'm supportive of them. I'm the oldest son, and I have 2 older sisters, but other than that, like, you know, I get to be the big brother, and so we all get along, and
awesome.
It's awesome. But you know, when you said you always like to do stuff, I actually also love doing nothing. Like that's a big part of it too. Like you gotta know, like that's what I mean. All of a sudden there's a gig or something, so you have to get out. But I like to just be present in what I'm doing, and sometimes that's definitely nothing. I like to be present doing nothing, you know.
It's time, right? You know, I've done, you know, I'm lucky enough to have done like just up to 300 episodes of speaking to people about writing songs, which is my fucking dream. And one of the huge things is having time to do nothing, time to also write, time to develop your own style. I mean, did you have some, you know, you've got such your own style, and that must have taken a few years to develop that kind of first notch on the belt of that, to be like, oh yeah, that's the tune, or this is the feeling. Was it a few years, do you think?
Well, I was lucky because I evolved through the years just enough, but also just a little, you know, all the time. Get influenced by others and find your own voice out of that, you know? Because I could, you know, since I was a teen, like one day, there's always a song or something that I, you know, would consider putting out. You know, I like to bury some of that's just for me and my friends I grew up on, or a lot of it, you know, because I put out a lot of music, but
unreleased stuff.
Yeah, of course. I mean, since I was a teenager, you know, I made my first like cassette tape when I was 17 years old or something. There's plenty of CDRs that I wouldn't want to just release in their entirety, or hardly any of it, you know, a lot of them. But I think along the way, you know, there's a glimmer of finding your voice. And then I will say in like 2008, I put out like one of my last CDRs under my own name, Kurt Vile. You know, for a while I used aliases, and but I put out a bunch of CDRs under my own name from 2003 to 2008. And 2008, I had this EP called Accidents EP, and that's when everybody I gave it to said, you know what, this is really good. Like I knew that was my voice, and it ended up being, you know, the first 8 tracks of my first collection of songs called, you know, my first album, Constant Hitmaker. So I remember, like, I didn't know who they were, but Beach House was playing in a new venue, and I just happened to see the guy out front who ran their label, because he put out Animal Collective and Ariel Pink, and I gave him this CDR, and then he told me that Beach House listened to it on their whole tour. You know, that was their whole tour.
Damn.
Things like that. I was like, okay, you know what? I think it's finally, and that, you know, and that's when I was 2008. I was 28. So, you know,
hey, that's pretty good. That you had the hustling, the gumption. I mean, it's pretty rad that, you know, that kind of confidence to be like, hey, have a CDR. I think like people talk about luck, and I guess my sort of definition of luck is some promise, and then kind of taking opportunities, time, right? I think there's a kind of Venn diagram of those kinds of things that you can kind of make your own luck, maybe, you know? Yeah, no, the hustle is important. I definitely, I think I'm really lucky more and more all the time, like that I'm from Philly, and I live in Philly because, like, it's close enough to New York where you definitely have to go up there to extend the hustle, because that's a hub for sure, especially when I was coming up. But I never
I never had to leave, so I kind of, got a little house early on in my life, and then got another, like for my kids, like when we got moving. I don't know. I think, but yeah, I guess what made me think of it was when you said good at hustling. It's like, yeah, well, I was also kind of a big fish in a small pond because it's just Philly, So like kind of knowing all the venues around and playing in the local scene. So, yeah, but in another way, it probably, maybe I would have, maybe I would have put out records a little sooner if I was like more in a major hub, but I'm glad I didn't, because this is who I am. I'm a Philly guy,
I think there's something to say obviously Philadelphia is a huge city, but when you're next to New York, you feel a bit smaller. I think there's plenty of bands and people who have become brilliant artists who are kind of from close enough to the big city, maybe a town half an hour away from London. There's that kind of mentality you grew up with. You're like, fuck, I want to be there. And if I'm going to be there, I kind of have to, maybe I have to work super extra hard to get there, because you've still got to get the train and you still got to make that time, make that effort. I think it's trying, right? A lot of this stuff is trying.
Yeah, it's trying. But like I said, because it's Philly, I am lucky because I feel if I was any further away, I would have to move to one of those, because like you got to be where the action is, and I could many a trip, like round trips to New York, come home late at night or whatever. But yeah, London, same thing. I mean, I love LA. I work there a lot. I love London. I never got to record in London. Is that where you are? Are you in London?
Yeah. Mate, come round.
I would love to. I would love to record. I mean, I love John Parrish, and I love so many things going on in London, but same with LA. Sometimes I like to work there, and I have a lot of friends out there, and once in a while I'm like, oh yeah, that's where all the action is, so people get opportunities every second. So once in a while, if I'm down on myself, I'm like, I'm kind of letting my thing go by, but really that's kind of is my thing to take it. I'm in my own world.
Yeah, do you ever question that? Do you ever think like, oh fuck, maybe I should reach out to more people? Do you ever like doubt yourself and that kind of stuff? I mean, it's only human, right?
Just for a second, once in a while, because I'm human.
Yeah.
But like I say, in another way, like more and more people come out here all the time. Is my point. Like some people can't afford to live in New York, or a lot of people in my neighborhood, like people are moving. A lot of people come from San Francisco and all over. Like I live in like a really pretty woodsy area, but I'm in the city. I forget sometimes that I don't live in the woods. I forget I'm not an Ewok.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
101 part-time jobs. 101 part-time jobs. Do you have kind of friends that you've met over the years, people that you look up to? I mean, you've played with, I imagine, so many of your favorite artists in Neil Young and lots of other folk. I mean, do you keep them? Are they people you can reach out to and, kind of collaborate with, not necessarily in a musical sense, but to send, maybe you could send your demo to them and just chat and try and provide, like, create that space where you feel excited, and make something new. Is that something that's on your radar?
What, can I call up Neil Young and send him a demo? Well,
yeah.
I mean, that'd be cool. Probably one day, maybe one day I would say, but I met him a few times, but every time I've met him, I've been really starstruck and act a little awkward. But I love that I know people in his camp, and my good friend Travis Good, who's a guitar player from the Sadies, and his brother was Dallas Good, who unfortunately passed away. But Travis is the best guitar player of all time, and he's known Neil forever. I always imagine like if I saw Neil Young in the right capacity, you know, I could just, knowing that I should just chill out. Sure, one day I could talk to him like a normal person. John Prine was that way, you know. He obviously unfortunately passed in 2020, but he and same with, you know, his bandmates and people that ran his label and his family, just getting to know all that circle of people, to where John Prine finally shows up to record, you know, on like with 1 day's notice. He agrees to show up after the Titans game is over, you know. And he's like you know, I love to sing with you, Kurt, which was just him being, you know, just him being a country gentleman. But he did show up, and we recorded that's probably my second, I would say that's probably my second biggest hit, you know. How Lucky, which his song that he sings with me on.
Amazing tune. I felt my skin, you know. I felt the air listening to that one. I felt the breeze.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, so that was obviously super magic. And then 2 days later we performed it. I got to play with him. We went out there to see him play the Grand Ole Opry New Year's Eve 2020. And so I played it on stage with him there. And then 2 days later I turned 40. So that was kind of the ultimate, you know. That's kind of
wow.
Yeah. I
mean, I feel like traveling Wilburys, they were kind of like far out. I mean, obviously it happened before I was born, but learning it as a teenager, that kind of idea of people writing songs and making records together, there wasn't so much of that in the 2000s. Maybe I was looking in the wrong direction, but I mean, did a lot of Sea Lice with Courtney Barnett. That tune with John Prine is getting in the studio with other people and writing with other people. Is that on your radar? Is your antenna up for that stuff?
I mean, I love that. Courtney, I knew I wanted to do a song with her, just one song. I liked her anyway, but then I heard the song Depreston, and I was like, and I hadn't heard like a songwriter type of song in a while. You know, nothing jumped out at me. There's plenty of music out there, so I'm sure there was, but I just, for a minute, I was like, oh wow, this is brand new, and it just sounds like a classic songwriter song, and it just inspired me to write one song with her. And then even that, it was sort of like I said, like over everything, I had most of it written, but I still had to I was still put on the spot in the studio. I still had to say which line went where. So you're in the hot seat. And then similarly, she added one song to the pot, and I think she put it together the same way. She showed up the next day and had the lyrics, and like you had to write, you sing this one, and that was you gotta make yourself uncomfortable for a minute to go in there. And like, I love how people in Nashville, you know, in a romantic sense, might write together, but how often do I do that? Pretty much never. You know, I never sit down and write a song with someone. I love Terry Allen. I want to work with him. We have played together. I like the idea of how...
I don't know Terry Allen.
Oh, he's an incredible songwriter.
What's he like?
He's a piano player, multimedia artist, but he's been around since... He's like one of the original outsider country artists.
Nice.
He's incredible. Anyway, I don't know. I for instance, I thought the other day, sometimes they just have a title. You go in, you got a title, and then you can sit around and write. But like, what I like is just people inspire me, and then I just want to collab with them in any way. I want to play with them. There's something specific I might like about them, like Kate LeBon or Chris Cohen, who play all over this new EP, like where I just want to play music with them. I want to hang out with them. Or Kate, we were on the road together anyway, and I loved being with her, so I knew she'd make me just want to turn the amp on. Like, she's here, so people just light you up, or you're inspired by them. But everybody's different. Or Stella Musgawa, drummer from Warpaint, Australian. She's played with me since Waking on a Pretty Days. But some people just, aside from your actual bandmates, the Violator, like, they just light you up, and you get you just get a family over time. Some become in the family, others are just passing collabs, which there are plenty of inspiring ones, like playing with your heroes or something, you know.
That's cool. You know, the one thing I get scared of sometimes is growing up and being in a position or a job or surrounded by people where like I'm not necessarily attuned to hearing those frequencies. You know, to be that person where you can have a low-lying frequency yourself to kind of understand other people's frequencies. I think that's such a trick. That's such a wonderful way to live.
Yeah, true. It is. Yeah, but yeah, it's funny. Yeah, everybody's a little. There's always. It's kind of endearing if you look at it that way. There's always a moment, at least for me, of being uncomfortable. You got to put yourself out there to be shy and, you know, be vulnerable until you both get comfortable. You know, like I remember working with Courtney when I came back to do more of the EP. There's like moments of like she didn't like something or we didn't have something exactly right. And then you're like, how do we get to this next step? And like, you know, you like, there's a moment of like, it's almost like high school again, where you're like, I was like, my feelings are hurt and I'm not exactly sure why, you know, like she didn't do it. Yeah, I know. But you're like, oh, it's really just it's like an obstacle. You got to get to the next with somebody you don't know that well yet, you know?
Yeah. Being front and center for it and be like, this might be painful. This might, you know, this is scary. I think that fear can be, you can use that fear, right? I mean, that's energy, that's fuel. I don't know, if you think about, maybe this is, I don't want to take you out of, you know, your world, because it's a beautiful thing. That kind of, where do you think your fuel for your world comes from? Where do you think that kind of energy, that kinetic imagination, those colors?
I don't know. I mean, that the longer I do it, the slightly older that I get. I have a whole bunch of different styles and ways I go about things, and then these days I say there are no rules, you know, that which Rob Schnapp, my producer, one of my latest producers, you know, he said that to me once when I was just trying to build my studio, like, what should I get, this or that? And obviously you hear that a million times, but it's true. You're like, there are no rules. And also there's not, you know, all music is like, nothing's exactly new, you know, so don't be, you know, sure I get mad when I hear somebody completely rip something off, copied something or sound too much like something, but the combination of there's no rules and there's nothing really new, like the possibilities are endless if you sort of know what you're doing. You don't even have to fully know what you're doing, but like I've been playing music for a long time. It's just natural to me yet. So
when you kind of get into that thing after writing a few tunes, you're like, oh, I wrote those in a sort of a kind of angle, or maybe a format. It was like a format of writing those few tunes. Do you try and push away that technique, that format, or do you not think about it at all?
I used to think so much about that stuff, but I don't anymore. I don't care, because like the less you think, the more will come to you. I just wait till it comes to me. I don't I don't think about it. Don't worry about it. Just, you know, that you'll hear it back on the speakers, you know, or you'll feel it when you're playing it there, that it feels right. It doesn't matter. There's no rules.
Yeah, I mean, get back to Moon Beach, and I mean, I mentioned going on a plane today. Back to Moon Beach has there's that one tune on it, Like a Wounded Bird Trying to Fly. I was like, this is like an exhale, you know. It's like coming through me, and it feels like that, the way you described it there. It's like, I don't know, you know, when you're having a conversation with your partner or a friend or a boss or anyone important, sometimes when you think about what you're trying to say, it doesn't come out right, and you try and just be the most pure you can be.
Yeah, that's sweet. And I will say that's my daughter Awilda. She wrote that line. My wife, she was trying to get her to, you know, she likes to sit around and read too much. Well, not too much, but she reads all day and does, you know. So we try to get her to make some exercise. She'll be like hunched down like me, and then we're getting her to do yoga, and she's like, I on a certain move, she's like, I feel like a wounded bird trying to fly. So We laughed about that for a long time, and then we were like camping in the woods, and it was just like the first line of the song, and she'd always be like, "Make sure I get credit, make sure I get credit." So I do like, but people don't read liner notes, but she's credited multiple times in the liner notes. But I also say at the end of the song, I say, "Like a wounded bird trying to fly." Well, my daughter, she wrote that line, so copyright a Will DeVille, you know. So like you got to put it in the song now, because like people just don't know anymore. It just goes out into the internet, and nobody knows anything anymore, you know. Like people think Courtney Barnett wrote Peeping Tomboy, which is fine, but in another way I was like, oh, that's actually one of my classic songs from 2011, you know, before you were born.
That's very funny. Hey, Kurt, thank you so much for being up for this. Wow. I really appreciate the time. This is good stuff. I've got one more question, if that's cool.
Yep.
Or one kind of I don't know, frame to think about. I mean, you know, I started this show speaking to friends and then friends of friends, and then it just got wider and wider about people's experiences playing in bands, trying to make it work, you know, how you value work, what success really looks like to you, all this stuff that I was definitely shy or too embarrassed to talk about when I was in bands, because you kind of sound like a noob when you talk about that stuff, when you're just trying to jam and have fun, right? I think there's something beautiful in creating a world that you can live sustainably within, you know, and whether that means 500 quid coming through so you can pay rent, or, you know, whatever it is. I think one of the things I like to hear about, or those kinds of stories that kind of define a lot of those periods of time, is the kind of mistakes or the work gaffes, you know, the kind of, oh damn, you know, like I did the wrong thing there and I kind of fixed it, or I didn't fix it. I mean, I've worked in radio just the last few years, but before that I worked in bars for a bunch, and I would always smash glasses, and I worked as a laborer, and, you know, I was trying to get paid. I didn't want someone to not employ me, so I often said, oh yeah, I know how to use that giant hacksaw, where I didn't, you know, and I'd get in trouble. When I say that kind of stuff, I mean, I know you worked as a forklift driver for a bit.
I did. I mean, you're saying what? And like work at more, you know, you're alluding to work accidents almost. I mean, yeah, I had to. Not
work accidents, but funny periods, yeah.
Yeah, funny period. I mean, I was blue collar. I moved to Boston. It's my wife. She wasn't my wife then, but I was young, and she went there to get her master's. She was, you know, in writing, creative writing, poetry, whatever. And I got a job through her friend's husband, not knowing. It was like, oh, you get a job in the warehouse packing boxes or what, and I had no idea, even when I got there, that would mean I'd have to drive a forklift with these Boston lifer blue collar types, a lot of them which were awesome, but some which were really rough. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Departed, but they really ripped me a new one, and with that Boston accent. But then I had this literally one piece, or not even one piece, 2-piece blue collar suit, and I'm on this forklift. It's like they call it your horse, you know, you got to get on the horse. And I remember you got to be careful. At one point I jumped off really quick of the forklift to grab a box off a rack, and the forklift was not, you know, the forklift was still moving, and it like almost ran over like my whole ankle, but I stopped it just in time. And like, I don't know, the things you got to do to climb out of, you know, to I guess to do what you want to do. First you got to make money, and but yeah, that same but that job though, like, you know, after a hard couple of weeks work and you get that first paycheck, I was making more money than I ever did in my life, to me, and I just bought tons of gear, you know, maybe some weed, you know.
Sounds kind of dangerous. I felt like I worried there when I said work mistakes. I was like, oh God, I hope someone didn't seriously injure themselves at the forklift. I got worried about that.
Yeah, no, I almost did. But like, and then, you know, I remember at 2 years after that ball busting job, I was like, I'm never driving a forklift again. And then I moved back to Philly, and I worked at a brewing company, and the first thing I saw was a forklift, and I was like, oh, I can drive that, and that's good. And then I'd be driving it all the time again, but it was more like a break, you know, because they were like, you're the best forklift driver I've ever seen. Because
oh
yeah.
Awesome. Were there what about like teenage jobs? I mean, growing up in that big family, did your parents put you to work early?
Yeah, they did early. I bussed tables in my early teens, at this. My first job ever was at a diner called the Blue Comet, and I look back. I got a crazy memory. I remember everything, so I look back fondly to that era. And also, same deal. I remember getting that first paycheck and just loading up on CDs, compact discs, like just spending the whole paycheck, and be like, this is my money, So I kind of was just in it my whole life with the music thing.
That's ace. Do you remember the first kind of paid gig that you did? The first kind of $100 that you got?
Wow. Yeah, I played so many like house shows and things like that. Or like, I remember the first big show we put on as teens was a quote unquote homeless benefit, and we did it in a church. And then, I didn't take any of that money, and we gave a bunch to the church, the church that let us put on the show. I have a feeling some of the other kids might have siphoned some of the money, but I didn't.
Hey, stand-up citizen.
But man, it more makes me think like the first time I put out my own 7-inch. I put out a 7-inch for the song Freeway, and I went to the record store. By then I was addicted to the record stores again in my mid to late 20s, and then I traded in like 10 of my 7 inches for like a crisp copy of one of the things I got was Bob Dylan Biograph vinyl, and I had it before, but I like Quinn the Eskimo. I was really excited to listen to it, get home from work. I'm like, I'm going to hear this. And then the first thing I did was I played it and I scratched it straight across. And it's just a big box set for Bob Dylan. And I was like, now I know I made it, because now I just put out my own record. I traded in to get exactly what I want. Yeah, and also get cash too, It's amazing when you just get cash from your music, or music for your music. Even trade.
I just started getting some sponsorship for this show, and it's like, damn, it's like cool. Making something for money is a cool feeling.
Yeah. I mean, you're in the, if you love what you're doing, you're in the golden age. You made it. Podcast. It's everything's just podcasts and TV shows anymore. Like, I mean, not anymore, but like if you're into that world, you're gonna have to come up for air eventually, I guess, but you don't have to.
Right. It's funny because everyone can do it, and like almost everyone is doing it. I feel like if you can find the way I describe it is I get the same feeling as I did when I was younger, building a skate ramp or a BMX jump or a tree house. That kind of like energy, I get that same energy doing this. I feel like that's I got to hold on to that no matter what I'm doing. Oh,
that's cool. And I love that too. I want my own show too, like combination radio show, play whatever I want, may play some music with myself and have people call it. Tom Sharpling, I worship Tom Sharpling. That's he has a show called The Best Show. It used to be on WFMU here in Jersey, but now he just does it himself. It's The Best Show, and he's the king. And I have his phone system where people used to call him in. Eventually I'm going to set up my own show too. But yeah,
well, if you need help setting it up, give me a call. You got my email. I can help you set it up over the phone.
Really?
You can do it.
All right.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. I think
the subscription is totally affordable, and you could broadcast that, and that's a cool thing to do with, like, I don't know, the label would call it marketing, wouldn't they? But it'd be a cool thing to do and talk about the record as well, and talk about what you're doing if you wanted to do it that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like everybody kind of needs a side hustle these days, and I'm working up to it for sure. So I will talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, what's your hair care?
Oh, man.
What's your daily routine?
My youngest sister Madeline, she's got me on a crazy routine these days, which is good because like I feel like my hair is long and curly, and people tend to think as they get older that they got to put oil in it, but your hair makes natural oils. So what I do mainly is I wash my hair with certain things, certain specific shampoos and conditioners that my sister uses, but once a week. And then the other times you take a shower, you just got to wear a shower cap. So you look ridiculous, but you don't wet your hair.
You don't get it wet.
You don't wet it unless you wash it, basically.
Right. I've been doing it all wrong. I've just been starting doing the once a week, and it's working. It's working.
Yeah.
But I'm still getting it wet. Maybe that's where I'm going wrong.
I would recommend trying to not get it wet in between. Is your hair supposed to be curly?
No, naturally, Carl. My sister's jealous, actually.
It might work anyway. You'd have to look into that. But I think it's just any hair. But especially for curly hair, because that happens where my hair gets all straight. But yeah, after a while, it was just you just never wet it unless you're washing it.
Love it. Hey, Kurt, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
A lot of fun.
Me too.
Cool.
Thanks.
I'm glad. Hey, just before you go, my brother and me, we've connected so much over your music over the years. I've got this on record now, but would you mind just like saying hi to Will for me?
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Will? It's KV. It's I'm hanging with your brother. See you around. See you in London.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I hope you don't mind that I asked.
No problem. Thanks.
Cool. See you soon.
All right, see ya.
Hell yeah! Kurt Vile on episode 300 of 101 Part-Time Jobs. I'm so grateful that I get to kind of have some kind of self-expression with doing this. I played in bands since I was a teenager, and I never lost that scratch. I never lost that urge. And it can be quite painful, that stuff. I'm really happy that I get to ask these questions and do these conversations, and the only reason I can do it is because of you. So thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to text in with your experiences. Go to 101parttimejobs.com. There's a WhatsApp number there that you can send through a voice note or a message. Tell me about your experiences in the workplace, because now is a funny time for it. People are doing all sorts of stuff. People are getting into all sorts of trouble and having fun. That, to me, is the good stuff. I'll be back next week with an episode with Mannequin Pussy and Hotline TNT, two really exciting bands. Make sure you subscribe and you get those delivered straight through to the postbox on your telephone, and you wake up and get that notification. Cheers again. I'm going to have myself a cold one.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.